So it is 11:30. I don't want to keep people waiting some more. So I do want to introduce a few people, or a couple people, important people. Welcome to our webinar, Unlocking the Secrets to Password Management, a CEO's Guide to Protecting Company Data. You know, in today's digital age, password security is an essential component to protecting your company's sensitive information. So our speakers today for today's sessions are Jeff Jackson, the CEO of Summit IT Services, and Harvey Mueller, a part of Keeper Security. Jeff brings years of experience in IT, while Harvey is an expert in password management and cybersecurity. They will provide a valuable insight into password management practices and how they can protect your company. So let's go ahead and dive in. Jeff, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure. Jeff Jackson, Summit IT Services. Been helping customers with their business networks since 2004. Before that, I've always been in the IT industry, so about 40 plus years right now. We've been Summit IT Services again since 2004, and we're constantly researching new ways to protect our clients and help them improve the bottom line. So.
What about you, Harvey?
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, so I'm Harvey. I'm in MSP partnerships here at Keeper Security. Currently manage around 350 partners, and I've been doing this for quite a while now, going on about 2 years here at Keeper. And then before that, worked in an MSP myself. So kind of in Jeff's role, working alongside him. And then before that was a business owner myself. So yeah.
Oh, Christina, you muted yourself.
So this cybersecurity framework is very important in the technology era, and Jeff, thrives his business off this framework. If you have the opportunity to speak on behalf of this, Jeff, and where password management comes on this wheel, if you can go ahead and explain the importance.
Well, let me paint a picture why we're even talking about passwords in general. Everybody struggles to create passwords. We use the same password over again. When we create a new password, we may change a couple characters, beginning or end. The reason that protecting passwords is super important is because hackers, you read about a breach every day, and hackers have access to the data. Once they've taken the data, they sell it on the dark web. So, hacking is here. It isn't going away. There's no 100% security, no matter how you look at it. The bad guys are going to continue to get access to our private information, our usernames, passwords, and the sites that they have access to. So with this information, they bring it to the dark web and they combine it with other harvested information about us and use it to target us. For example, let's take social media. You bank at, TD Bank. Well, that's available. It's public knowledge most of the time if you've made that available or complained about TD Bank on Facebook, for example. Now they can say, okay, let's try the passwords that we have for Jeff at his TD Bank account because we know he works there. So it's more of a targeted attack. Passwords should be unique, and they should be rotated every now and then. But let's talk about, this is the NIST cybersecurity framework, this picture you're looking at right now. And passwords fit in here, obviously in the protection safeguard area. Detection, we'll talk about that a little later. But password managers have a way of detecting whether or not a password's been reused or has been compromised. But we can move on to the best practices now, I suppose. You're muted again.
I am just on fire today. So before we start, I wanted to go over a little bit about the breach statistics and why it's important to have those strong passwords. So in the year of 2020, 1,001 reported data breaches were in the United States, meaning 310 million were affected. Those individuals, not only the people that are clients or customers, but also employees as well, lost productivity, lost time. That's a lot of people affected by breaches. And the average cost of a data breach is $3.86 million. That's crazy. So smaller businesses, if you are breached, the possibility of you staying in business is slim to none because of the average cost of a data breach. It's not just the initial data breach, but it's also the time after a data breach. So like the average time to identify and contain a data breach is 280 days. That's a lot of lost time and productivity for your clients, for your employees. That's a massive amount of strain on your business. And a lot of these breaches are actually caused by human error. So whether it's phishing, maluse of passwords, it's all caused by human error. 95% of it, 5% of it is the cybersecurity. But if you're not teaching your employees to do things correctly, then there's a possibility that you can get hacked in the long run. And a lot of people think themselves, I'm not big enough to get hacked. With that mentality in this day and age, it's not a possibility of if you'll get hacked, rather when you'll get hacked. So 43% of cyber attacks are aimed at smaller businesses. So it's important to teach your employees and to yourself the importance of cybersecurity and the ways you can do to protect yourself. So Jeff is going to go ahead and talk about the best practice for password creation, and I'm just going to close my camera so you guys don't have to see me.
So Christina just mentioned how long you could be affected by a breach. I think everybody knows now that Harvard Pilgrim was hacked on the 17th of April, and they are still down. And they say it may be several more weeks. Now, Harvard Pilgrim's a big target. Very, very, very difficult hack, I am sure. They probably worked on it for several years. Smaller businesses don't have the luxury of having that the amount of protection a company like Harvard Pilgrim does. It's just a simple matter of risk versus cash. So let's talk about tips and best practices. The reason, again, we're talking about this is I have firsthand experience from new customers, previous customers, current customers, storing passwords in spreadsheets, in browsers, in a Word doc on your computer, on a piece of paper attached under your keyboard or to the monitor. Passwords should be changed, on a regular basis. Some regulations say 90 days, some say 180 with multi-factor authentication. That can be pushed out a little bit further. Usually it's a little less of importance to change it more often. The key is having a complex password. Now, complex passwords are difficult to remember. Randomly generated passwords are impossible to remember and impossible to type. A complex password is something that you can type at your keyboard. You got to log into your computer. So how do you create one of those? Phrases are much easier to remember than random numbers and letters. Everybody's gotten a new service from, let's say, Comcast, for example, and the password to your wireless could be something like fish, capital FISH, a random number like 39, and then door, DOOR. If you put that into a test to figure out whether that was a complex password or not, there's websites you can go to test your passwords. It's okay because number one, it uses a dictionary word fish, two dictionary words, fish and door. It's okay, but it's not great. Words are okay if you use some substitution in there, and that's where the special characters come in. So special characters before, let's say like a hash and an exclamation point with a phrase like Think of something like I used to use something called, from Looney Tunes, or think of, some TV show you watch. Use the first letter of a sentence, of the words in a sentence. So there's all different kinds of ways to create unique passwords. The key is there's kind of two things. Number one, complex, non-dictionary words, and don't reuse the same password over at multiple sites. That one should be obvious, but sometimes people don't realize that if you're hacked at one site, it's also pretty easy to figure out. Social media and publicly available information that we all share on the web, what other sites that password may be used at, even if you change your username. So again, multi-factor authentication, complex passwords, and then don't store them on your computer unless they're in encrypted format, and that's where we come to talking about a password manager. So we've evaluated and used several password managers. Some of you already know that we advocated for KeePass a while back, and a number of our customers use KeePass. One password manager is better than no password manager. So a password manager will generate and populate usernames and passwords into the site that you're logging into. Why is that important? If the password manager can generate a random password for you and change it on a regular basis, then you don't need to know what it is and you don't need to type it. It can inject it into the browser for you, so it'll just paste it into the browser automatically when you go to that website. The advantage of using it is password managers typically will tell you whether you have the password's too weak or it's being reused. So it helps you. It also stores them. Most password managers, there's a desktop version, there's a browser version, there's a mobile version. So you can take your passwords wherever you go. And again, most password managers also store the passwords encrypted. So you do need to create one password that you know to log into your computer, access your password manager, and the rest of them, you can use your password manager to log into the applications and websites that you need. So we just recently did an analysis of password managers across the board. There's probably about 20 of them out there. We narrowed it down to 3, and we end up picking Keeper for a number of reasons. Keeper can integrate with Microsoft's Azure, meaning users that have email address with Microsoft, you can do single sign-on. So when you access your devices, your computer, your whatever, your cell phone, tablet, it can automatically log you into your password manager, and then it works very well with your cell phone, mobile phone, and desktop computer. It also allows you to determine how many passwords were reused, helps you create new ones. It also tell you when the password has been compromised on the dark web. So that's why we have Harvey here. We probably spent 6 months looking for password managers. We partnered with Keeper for a number of reasons, best in class, and we think they got the best product out here. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how Keeper works, Harvey?
Yeah, happy to. Well, Keeper is obviously to a zero trust, zero knowledge architecture. So basically what that means is by nature, nobody's going to be able to see anybody else's credentials in your environment. And the reason we do the zero trust, zero knowledge architecture is just because it's the most secure architecture and it's the best way to run your business so that you don't open up vulnerabilities in a lot of other ways. But just to take a big step back, and I know, Jeff, you touched on this in a couple ways here. It's important to understand the password manager structure from the ground up. So just like anybody who's using one now is probably familiar, we use the terminology vault a lot. And the structure of a vault is basically having a key to access like any valuables or information that is very sensitive or privileged. So we have the same structure, like Jeff mentioned, with our password managers. You essentially enter a master password, maybe some MFA, or maybe you just SSO right into it. but there's a lot of ways to access those credentials. And we keep it under world-class encryption. That's a 256-bit AES encryption on the record level. A lot of competition in the password management space is kind of cutting corners with this stuff. So it's important to keep us as password managers very accountable for the type of encryption. And that's why Jeff brought us through that evaluation. So the big idea behind a password manager is really it's also supposed to keep your life easier. You always think about the security adoption paradox and rolling out any cybersecurity solution. Like, who's really going to use this? Password managers are one of the ones that when you do have it set up, it makes your life very simple. So we're going to remember all of your credentials for you, and all of them can be randomly generated as well. So you're going to have a much more secure environment with it all memorized. And then also it's going to be able to auto submit for you so that you're not constantly remembering or copying and pasting. It just streamlines your day to day.
Hey, Harvey, you mentioned making life easier for you. I just wanted to add something to that to say that I don't even use my browser favorites anymore for sites that I actually have credentials to log into. I store them right in my password manager. That's really how I get to websites now. No more browser favorites. I just use the password manager.
Yeah, for sure. That's a great way to go about it. You can just throw that URL in and launch out, and it will auto submit for you. So pretty handy tool. But on that note, kind of where people are storing credentials today, if you're not on a password manager, we also have like a browser storage, or maybe you're storing stuff in an Excel sheet. It opens up a lot of vulnerabilities. So that's an important thing. We avoid that with a password manager. All you would need is a workstation credential, basically, to access everything on a browser. Or also, like, you don't know what's in the terms and conditions and policies for any software that you're using, so they could be skimming data from you. With a zero trust solution with Keeper, basically, you know that we have zero access to any of your data, which is pretty significant. So, go ahead.
One of the benefits, one of the criteria why we chose Keeper 2 is that with KeePass, there's no sharing of passwords. So if you work in a group environment, you need to share passwords with multiple individuals. We had to have a separate vault for each set of passwords, let's say for purchasing or admin or HR. And you'd have to have multiple vaults open. With Keeper, it's kind of aligned with Microsoft's SharePoint, for example. You create a group and then you assign people to that group, and those people assigned to that group have access to the passwords you put in there. And you can restrict that access. You can you can turn that access off and turn it on fairly easily. So from a management point of view, it's very easy to manage access and who has rights, and also see who has access and rights to those passwords.
Absolutely. Yeah, that goes like right in line with this slide, password protection and storage. You absolutely can get super granular on who exactly is accessing what and when. You can get reporting and alerting on it. We have the most in-depth reporting and alerting out of any password management tool. So if you just think, hey, I want to know what my employees are doing in their environment, or hey, do I want to see if everybody has strong credentials or weak credentials or breached credentials, all of that you're going to be able to get reporting on for your environment. And then really, you just take it up with that employee and make sure that you have a proper security stance. So a lot of tools at your disposal. But it's important to think about, like, how do you share your credit card information now? How do you share your financial credentials, and how do you even share like the Netflix password? I know we're going to get charged for that coming up pretty soon here, but all of those things are vulnerabilities if you're not using a password manager, and specifically Keeper because of the security stance. So
the scenario of rolling out something like this in a business environment is that once a company decides they're going to use a password manager, whoever the CEO, president has, global access, and you bring a new employee on, you create the account for them, and then you share or you add them to a group where they need permissions. So there's no running around trying to figure out how do we get these credentials to these people so they can do their jobs. So when they come into the organization, you create that user form, and you add them to groups, and they automatically have the rights and privileges that you've already assigned for that group. Likewise, when you terminate someone, you remove them from Keeper, and that's it. They're done. No more access to any of that information. So rolling it out in an organization makes it really easy, and then also maintaining it while you're there. Each user can have their own individual credentials. They also have the opportunity to use it at the personal level, as well as business. Totally separate vault, but they can use it for personal as well as for work.
Absolutely. Want to go to the next slide?
Yeah, let's talk policy procedure.
Yeah, I was about to just make that introduction, so I'm just shut my camera off again.
Yeah, for sure. So I think having clear policies around password management is essential. So Jeff and you guys can all sit down together and of course discuss what's going to be appropriate for your environment specifically, but enforcing complexity of credentials on both the actual credential level and for the master password and authentication into your password manager, never reusing, always rotating, and securing like all of your credentials, not just leaving some of them in a password manager and some of them outside of it, are all essential to this. So, and it kind of a note that we use all the time here at Keeper because it's really eye-opening. Is we have done our own studies on everything in the password management space and cybersecurity space, but we found that 81% of breaches are due to a failure to secure passwords, credentials, and secrets, which is, if you ask me, completely ridiculous. I never would have thought that number was going to be so high, but you just can't leave that big of a gap in your business. So,
speaking of secrets, something that's not here in the slides, but I did want to bring to your attention. I mentioned earlier that the amount of information we share inadvertently just by being online. It's not hard to figure out my high school mascot because public record where I went to high school and where I grew up. So when you're asked secret questions, I encourage you to tell white lies. Things like, where were you married? Where did you go on your first date? If your information is valuable enough, and I can tell you insurance, health insurance, and financials are valuable enough for people to spend time researching this stuff, then they can figure out your secret questions. What's your uncle's cousin's, last name kind of thing. All that stuff is public record for someone that really wants to go figure it out if you haven't already shared it on social media. So when those secret questions, I store those in my password manager as well. And I never use factual information to answer the secret questions because they're not really secret.
Yep, very smart. We offer a wide variety of flexibility in our password manager, so it doesn't just have to be credentials. Like Jeff said, you can store just about anything you want in there, so it's a great option. And then again, all of it will be audited and reported on as well.
So yeah, policy and procedure, goes in line with the NIST cybersecurity framework. There's well-established policies to have, unique passwords, don't reuse passwords, don't share passwords, and train people on a regular basis as to how they should create them, use them. So as far as procedure goes, back to that NIST cybersecurity framework, a big chunk of that on the bottom of that wheel was detection. You have to detect when someone has breached your environment or even an employee being someplace they shouldn't. So how do you monitor for failed login attempts or successful login attempts? It's all recorded. How do you deactivate retired accounts? Well, you have a procedure in place that says, hey, when an employee leaves, here's the checklists of things that need to happen. And if awareness training is something that should be done on a regular basis, there are a number of topics that can be covered, and password hygiene is one of them. And then audits. We mentioned already that Keeper lets you see passwords that are reused, the strength of the passwords across the board, and passwords that have been breached. So all of this stuff should be part of your procedures to provide as high level security as possible, protect your company's data and your customers' data. So as far as procedures go, Harvey, anything to add to that? I know we're up 11:55. We got a few minutes left before we open up for questions.
Yeah, for sure. I would say it's important to use our tools, like you mentioned. So security audit has full reporting in the weak, medium, strong, reused, and unique credentials. And then on the breach watch side, it's going to be anything found on the dark web. So I do recommend that is constantly looked at. It's very simple. Like end users will get notifications, so it's not always you having to reach out to that end user to change it. Hopefully, they're proactively doing it. But then as time goes by, definitely doing the awareness training and following up with those employees who just have dropped the ball on actually rotating certain credentials. So we make it easy enough within Keeper. I mean, all you have to do is click a little button and it generates a password. So it should be a pretty simple kind of switch there, and then they're off and running.
So just to clarify, we talked about the dark web a couple of times. For those of you that don't know what it is, this is a nefarious location on the internet. Think of where the militias hang out, or where the underground people hang out. The dark web is where hackers hang out, and when data is breached from a company, it's stored and sold there, bought and sold. You can literally go buy all of Harvard Pilgrim's now that they've been breached. So the data's out there. I haven't checked. I don't necessarily go on the dark web, but there are security companies like Keeper that monitor the dark web for data. So if they see your username and password, or your username and website URL out there for sale, software like Keeper is going to notify you. There's other software too that are specifically for dark web scanning that will look at email addresses and see if they've been are available for sale on the dark web. So that's just how the dark web works. You can buy ransomware packages. You can buy access to computers. There's all kinds of things that literally you can go buy on the dark web to orchestrate your own ransomware attack, literally, if you wanted to.
Yeah, there's no laws on the dark web. I think working in cybersecurity over the last 3 years plus, it's been interesting. I've had individuals actually like come either to my former MSP and then also to Keeper after the actual breaches happened, for example, and have to go through password rotations and are seeking a tool to help with that. But yeah, I've seen firsthand how it can affect businesses, and it's a long cleanup process. It strains everything in the business, and a lot of times you're not even operational for quite a long time there. So
by monitoring the dark web for the URL that you visit, as well as your username, it's inevitable that this data is going to be stolen and sold at some point. But the sooner you know, the sooner you can go change your passwords, and that's almost an essential tool nowadays in the fight against cybercrime. So I guess we can open it up for questions, see what we have out there for questions we can help with, answer.
Oh yeah, Jeff, and bringing it back to, the policies and procedures, 85% of cyber crimes are committed by human error. So, implementing these procedures can help you in the long run. And I know that's something that we help out our partners and clients that we work with. We pass along these pieces of papers that need to sign when they're onboarded as a employee. So I think it's important to note that, we can also help when it comes to implementing policies and procedures. I know we opened up to Q&A, but I don't currently see anything. If you do have any questions, can you raise your hand or, write anything in the chat? All right, I'm gonna unmute you, Harry. 1 second. You should be unmuted. You gotta unmute yourself, Harry, to ask questions.
You can
Nice.
also just put it in Q&A if you want.
If you'd like to put it in Q&A, Harry, seems like we're having some technical difficulties on our end.
There's a Q&A button at the top of the screen, or you can put it in chat.
And we
That's-
also have Jean. I'm gonna unmute you. Jean, if you press the mic button, you're muted yourself.
Dr. Gnarly asked about a cost. Yeah, there's a charge
Okay.
for it. We have, over the past 6 to 12 months, have been building a cybersecurity, advanced cybersecurity package. It includes a number of tools, and Keeper is one of them. We haven't really looked at, rolling out or selling Keeper as a standalone, but that may be because you're not the first person that asked. So we're going to look into that. But yeah, there's a charge for it. It's a per user charge.
All right,
And
my
Jean?
question is, like, I'm the one that has to explain this to our staff, and I really don't get how it works. Like, if I try to log into my bank and I use an encrypted password from Keeper, like, how does my bank know who I am? Or if I go onto the SBA website, like, how does it work?
Yeah, good question. So the credential itself is actually going to be in plain text when it submits to the website. So it's just your normal credential, just how you have it now, but still saved by Keeper and remembered by Keeper in encryption. So we basically will take that password and scramble it up into something that basically makes 0 sense to anybody. But then when you enter your master password, it will unscramble it and make it back into that plain text credential to auto submit with our browser extension.
All right.
Does
I'm
that
not
make
sure
more
I
sense?
still get it, but I guess if I tried it a few times, then I would be able to explain it better to people.
For sure, yeah. It's basically like if you would imagine writing it down in a notebook, closing the notebook. When it's closed in the notebook, it's going to be, if anybody else opened up the notebook, nobody would be able to understand it because it's all a bunch of, for example, random letters, random numbers. But then only when you open the notebook, then you're going to be able to see the actual credential.
Okay.
I would add that you don't even need to see it, and there is a way to mask it. So if you need people to use your credentials to log in, they don't actually see the credentials. The whole purpose of generating random passwords is so that you really can't type it in. So you're going to the URL and pasting it in. Same thing when you change your password at the bank, for example. Keeper will literally generate a password for you to inject in the change passwords field, so that it'll generate the password, store it, and you obviously have to log into the bank and go to wherever it lets you change passwords, but that's how it works.
We have another question from Eric. Are there any conditional access controls similar to Microsoft 365?
I'll let Harry take that. I mean, I'll let yeah,
Harvey?
he's the best one. Harvey's the best one to answer that.
Yeah, conditional access is all basically set on either the record level, so if record as in credentials, folder level, and then also on the admin side, because there's on the admin side, that's what Jeff and you would have access to. You'd be able to set a lot of different rules on who can access what and when, stuff like that. So you can get very granular on that. We're probably between us and one other password manager right now. We have the most granularity with that. And we are going towards a privilege access management solution, which means we have a lot of other solutions that kind of pair with our password management tool. So short answer, yes, we do have a lot of that.
Do we have any other questions?
Someone had their hand raised there.
Oh, we have
Christine.
Christine. I can unmute you, or you can write it in the chat. I'm gonna go ahead and allow your mic. You have to unmute yourself. Upper right-hand corner, there's a picture of a mic.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted. You can hear me?
Hi,
Yes, we
Christine.
can.
Hi, hello. So I have a question. You talked about awareness training, and I've worked in finance, and I've worked at organizations that would periodically, I mean, they would test you with phishing emails. What do you recommend to small businesses? Because I think when you just talk about it, not that much sinks in. But when somebody has to really think when they get a weird email, what is this? It brings it home. So I don't know what your suggestions are on that.
I'm glad you asked. I had mentioned that, you know, we have been working on an advanced cybersecurity package over the last almost year, trying to find the right tools, testing them all. And one of the components of that advanced cybersecurity package is testing, phishing. It's the way it works. It's training basically, and the way it works is it sends random emails to your end users, and it really tests their ability to determine whether this email is good or bad. There's a testing component. So when we onboard, there's a testing component where all employees would go through the training. And I have to admit, it's very good. We've been using it internally here for a while now. Again, we thoroughly vet everything we roll out to our customers. And then there's micro trainings where you get you know, it's literally like a 3 to 5 minute quiz a week. Based on your response to the phishing emails, you may have to go through advanced training if you end up clicking on the wrong links. Obviously, the phishing emails, they're legitimate. If you click on the wrong link, basically it says, hey, you failed. This could have been really catastrophic if it was a real phishing email. And then, you know, whoever the admin or the owner is notified so that, you know, the business owner knows. And then, you know, you can send that individual through additional training.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Good questions.
Very good questions. Yeah.
Yeah, she just brought up something. You know, she's in finance, and they've done this cyber liability training. 2004, I know it was a long time ago, but one of the reasons that you know, we started Summit is to bring some of that corporate technology down to the small business, so that they have the same tools to protect themselves as corporations do.
Yeah, it's super important because small businesses are just very vulnerable without these solutions. So, yeah. Got another question?
Gene?
I'm just wondering, when is this enabled for us to be able to sign up for it? The Keeper Password Manager?
Good question. So we are rolling this out. So we have, you know, managed agreements with most of our customers, and we are rolling it out as agreements are renewed. So if your anniversary date was in June or July, there's work on our part to get it configured and rolled out and training. So we didn't want to just have all of our 40 customers do it all at once.
Yep.
We wouldn't be able to do a good job at bringing the people on board. So it'll probably, so we started in, we started in last month, and we'll probably roll out to everyone or offer it to everyone by the end of the year, if not, you know, February, March next year.
All right, great, thanks.
If you're certainly interested in getting it sooner rather than later, you know, let us know and we'll see if we can't fit it in.
Okay. I think we are.
Okay, I'll take a note. Christine, is there another question?
I just, is there like a demo for Keeper that you can watch just to better visualize how it works versus, I mean, I conceptually understand it, but sometimes, you know, just looking at a demo helps you visualize how something works.
Of course, yes. I will actually put it right in the chat right here. And Jeff, feel free to share this as well. We have a YouTube series called Keeper 101, and it just brings you through basically the training with onboarding with Keeper, basically. And all that's going to do is give you a little demo of the end user vault. But then as you progress through the series, you can see some more of the admin privileges and where you can get more granular on access control. But I encourage you to watch that. And then I also probably have a couple more, but as we keep talking here, I'll just put them in the chat for you.
Yeah, Keeper 101 gives you the end user experience. So they're pretty good. I'd encourage, just if you want to see how it works. Yeah, I'll be happy to give demos too. If anybody wants to ask more questions and show you my vault and how we're using it in our organization, you know, from the multi-level approach from the admin on down and groups and sharing, things like that.
I'm gonna wait one more second for if any last minute questions. So
Question,
I know we're all go for it, Jeff.
I just had a question. Is anybody using a password manager now?
Raise your hand if you are.
I mean,
What
I
if you
know.
have one installed but don't use it?
Yeah, we've always advocated. Sarah's using Bitwarden. Good. Sarah's in the IT field.
Very cool. Yep. That's a good option. That's
Yep.
one of the competitors I go up against all the time.
Yep.
I have gone through, man, hundreds of evaluations with Bitwarden. The only difference really is the self-hosted versus cloud-hosted, and then also a couple of vulnerabilities recently have happened on Bitwarden's side. So
Harry just noted that he has a document that has 266 passwords that are encrypted.
226 coded passwords. You know, Harry, a lot of people in the past have used password protected Word docs or Excel spreadsheets. There's just so much information in one location that is so vulnerable, especially with Dropbox. The professional version of Dropbox or the business version of Dropbox is paid for, has better security than the free version. The problem with Dropbox is that it is everywhere. So wherever you've logged into Dropbox, there's likely a copy of that doc. You know, coded. I know I've seen people, you know, use things like, well, my password is, you know, house door, and I always put a hash mark, exclamation point in the front and a random number at the end. I mean, that's okay, but the fact that they're all stored in one location that's unencrypted is probably a little more vulnerability than I'd be comfortable with. Plus, there's you know, the advantages of a password manager is you're also storing the URL and it automatically injects it into the website. So when I open up Keeper and I want to go to my QuickBooks Online, I click QuickBooks Online. It automatically opens the browser and plugs in the credentials. That's it. I'm done. All I need to do is put in my two-factor authentication code. So there's a time savings. I can share those with anybody if I need to. And they're on my my smartphone, and they're on my laptop, and they're on my desktop, all encrypted using the Keeper app. So not only efficiencies, but it's a hell of a lot more secure. Google, I know some people like to store their passwords in a browser. The issue with storing passwords in a browser that we see is that a lot of compromises, network compromises, hackers don't just announce themselves anymore. They lay in wait. They lay in wait in by capturing data, capturing keystrokes, capturing information. Now, if someone has access to my computer, it's just a couple of clicks to open up to open up Google browser and go and look at all the passwords and steal them off the computer. As a matter of fact, they're actually stored in a cache. You can go grab those pretty easily. The thing with Keeper is every single one of them is encrypted. It's stored, and I can mask them. In other words, make it so that you can't see it, period. So if that same thing were to happen with Keeper, there's no way that they can grab all of the passwords or any number of them quickly, easily, the way it stores and masks the passwords.
Yeah, I think under a 256-bit AES encryption, on the record level, you'd be encrypting or decrypting each credential for years. So to make your way through a vault, it would be a ridiculous amount of work, basically. Yeah, and then I also saw a question about the thumb drive. The thumb drive, that's an interesting one. So again, it's not going to be in an encrypted environment, so that's a big issue as with credential management. But it is a little safer in the idea that it's always on you and you always can monitor it. The only big thing with that is what happens if you lose the drive. So Keeper is backing it up with a hard download in a 256-bit AES encryption, and then in our cloud environment too. So if somebody fails too many login attempts on a device, we destruct the data on the end user device, and next time you log in, it will just retrieve it from the cloud. So there's no chance that like one device is vulnerable to being taken in that instance. So
iOS password storage, if it's using the key, I forget the exact name of it, the key chain, fairly safe, isolated to iOS devices though. Like you're talking about an iPhone, iPad, that is encrypted. Good way to store passwords. It's a keychain technology, 256-bit encryption, but again, it's isolated to iOS devices.
See that Eric's typing, so we'll hold off a second. But in conjunction with the thumb drive, like Harvey had noted, yes, if you lose it, that's a big stressor on you. But if you lose it and someone finds it, then they have the keys to your kingdom right there, right? So it might be a massive vulnerability, especially if you're storing what type of login it is. Like, hey, this is my Google Gmail account. It has this password on it. It's leading them directly to your account. It is secure in a sense that it's always on you, like Harvey said, but there are some vulnerabilities that come with having it on a thumb drive.
Yeah, now talking about thumb drives, nowadays, if you're running Windows 10, I would not carry a thumb drive around me if it was not encrypted. So with Windows 10, you can literally go to your system settings and enable encryption on any device that's attached to your computer. So if you did lose that thumb drive, you'd say, oh, well, I lost the data, but I know no one can access it. So I would definitely use that encryption built into Windows 10 to encrypt thumb drives.
And then I see Eric's question, if there's a breach of passwords in Keeper. Oh, yes. So our browser extension is going to walk you through a rotation of credentials very simply. So as you go to a website, our browser extension, when you click change password, will ask, hey, do you want to change this credential? And you just click yes. It'll bring you up with all the options. You can generate a credential right on the web page, save it, and then it's rotated. As you rotate it with the website. We also have another tool called Keeper Secrets Manager, and this is a whole nother kind of way we could go down. But Secrets Manager will actually handle service account rotations for you. It's part of our privilege access management offering. So that's something else to think about.
That's coming, right? It's not fully rolled out yet.
Yeah, it's in our beta environment, so you'll hear about it in the coming week or so, I want to say. There is an additional cost for that, yes. But I believe, Jeff, you're able to access it at the MSP level and kind of distribute and kind of spread out that cost. So yep. I'll kind of let Jeff talk about that whenever we get finalized pricing on it and everything.
So what Eric may also be alluding to by that question, and I'll just throw this out there, from an administrative point, let's say that, someone has an account on a computer and they have accounts on multiple computers, same username and password. How do they easily change all those devices that they have that username and password on that's been breached? There are ways to do it with some of these tools. Harvey was talking about privileged access management. But you, in the individual case, Eric, you would need to go whatever device that is and find the password reset section of whether it's a browser or an application, and then Keeper it notices the old password field and the two new password fields, and it prompts you and says, hey, this looks like a password reset. Do you want to put your old password in here? And then we'll automatically generate you a new one and paste it in twice. So that's how Keeper helps reset passwords on a one-off basis currently.
I see he's also raising his hand, so he probably has an additional question. I'm going to allow your mic, Eric, if you want to unmute yourself.
Am I allowed to talk?
You're allowed to talk, Eric.
Okay. Yeah, it seems like so. Like some of the questions, like you know, I have a sheet. It's password protected. It's you know, on my computer. I have a copy on it. I don't have a USB drive, but 3 computers, let's say, well, maybe a laptop and two desktops, and I guess the security in my mind is that that's only controlled by me. But I realize there's risk in that, and there's lack of convenience, right? So Keeper, it seems like, gives me some convenience with, I assume, Android and iPhone apps and that kind of stuff. But there's also, you know, then it goes to a vault in the cloud. It's all encrypted and all that security. But I guess, like, thinking through, assuming that's all good, which I'm sure it is, my thought is like, okay, if my files get stolen by somebody that breaks into my house and has that, you know, somehow that document gets out, I'm up a creek, right? I don't have any. I gotta cut and paste. I gotta go piece by piece to site by site to get that password changed. I guess an unseen advantage, which I think I'm reading this right from what you're saying, is that if you have a Keeper in your browser, you have 50, 200, 300, whatever passcodes or whatever are in there, and let's say you figure out, hey, somebody got my credentials. Well, how do I go to all those sites? How do I do it pretty conveniently and quickly? And since it's in a browser plugin, I'm assuming I can just do point and click, like Jeff, you were saying. And
Right.
and so it's still not. And I guess this additional thing is even better. There's a cost to it, but there's a lot of convenience. Again, assuming everything goes wrong, the worst, right? There's a way for me to clean up the mess a little bit easier than it is for my than my password protected Excel sheet or Word document that, you know, I got to kind of struggle through. So I like what it, like those, you know, it's a good convenient tool that gives me a couple of features for I guess a reasonable price. I think I saw $6. Yeah. So okay, and it's better then, right? So
yeah. Go ahead, Jeff.
Kind of just you know, one of the things with encrypted, you know, it's stored in the cloud. Is it safe? Well, the fact that it's encrypted and it can't be unencrypted without a username, password, and multi-factor authentication code, which makes it extremely difficult to unencrypt a vault. If you were to get that vault, there's nothing you can do with it. So what we're talking about here is if your credentials for, let's say, TD Bank were exposed on the dark web, you get a notice saying, hey, they've been hacked and your username and password is out there. You're only talking about changing one site's username and password. So it's not like you're going to go through, I mean, I literally have probably 300 or 400 you know, sites with credentials. I would never fathom having to change all those at once. I do get alerts saying, hey, Harvard Pilgrim was hacked. You need to go change your password. But yeah,
I'm just thinking, if you know, I found out today my kids have friends over that are playing whatever game, and my son says, hey, Bobby, use this computer. My dad won't mind. And then I find out Bobby's a little bit more smarter than, you know, he let on. And again, so either case is bad. One, either I leave myself logged in on a browser, he sees something like that and says, okay, I can get into all these things. He's malicious. Or two, is he sees a document that he saves to his USB drive as a kid, emails it to himself, and he figures he'll hack my Excel sheet later on. Either one, there's an exposure that I have become aware of. I think this is more convenient from what you said as far as the, fixing the problem. This is better than me trying to figure out what going through my Excel sheet is all I'm saying.
Right.
So.
Yeah. So like when you look at an Excel sheet and then you cross-reference it to all the websites, you still are going to have to go through the same process with going out to the website and clicking, hey, I'm going to change my password, right? But with like Keeper, for example, you would have it right in the browser. It would populate and say, hey, here's the credential for the website when you go there. And then you would just go to the password change field, and then you just generate a password, and it would all submit in for you. So it's just a few less clicks. If you think of it from a password management perspective, we've gotten this question quite a bit, actually. It would be almost impossible for us to, number one, integrate with every website out there, and then number two, also update as websites change all the time. So there's no like clean solution besides a browser extension recognizing it. But yes, so slightly simpler from the browser extension. Yep.
I got one last back to
Hey guys,
policies and
I hate
procedures.
to put a hard stop on it, but we do, Microsoft Teams tends to kick you off after the 5 minutes. So I do want to just kind of go over the key takeaways and then, put out our conclusion with the opportunity to have an initial conversation with Jeff, just a hands-on conversation, and kind of bring this conversation to another meeting, just a one-on-one. So I apologize not to be harsh or anything, but some key takeaways, passwords are the keys to the kingdom. So try your best to make uncrackable basically. And strong passwords are a must and they need to be changed often. We highly encourage password management tools such as Keeper. And then we should also implement policies to assure your company is following structured rules. These are very important from a business standpoint. And I mean, to bring you to the next, but wait, there's more. So we're offering a free 15 minutes with Jeff Jackson, just to kind of go over what your infrastructure could use and, make your walls a little more solid than they actually are. And then we also have another before seen password management guide that we want to offer to exclusively everybody who's on this call right now. It basically goes over what we've discussed today. So then the cybersecurity framework, password management, password creation, and policies and procedures. I highly encourage you to take us up on this offer because it could bring you into, things that you've never thought about before. And I'm sure after the conversation we had today, your mind's a little stirring and you still have some questions. You might not want to vocalize them here publicly, but Jeff would love to answer them in the long run. We want to say thank you for everybody who's attended today, especially our speakers. Thank you, Harvey, so much for joining us here at Summit IT. And thank you, Jeff, for your wise words and wisdom, because I know everybody appreciates it.
All right. Thanks for hosting, Christina. And Harvey, thanks for joining us.
Of course. Thanks,
All
guys.
right. I'm going to go ahead and send you guys some emails just to say, hey, thanks for joining us, and inclusion signing you up for, a 15-minute conversation with Jeff. Thank you all again for joining us, and we hope to see you soon.
Take care. Have a good weekend, everybody. Stay safe.
Bye.